Hey guys, Shingu here, and I'm back with another topical discussion. Today I wanted to focus on a topic that's recently been intriguing me, and that is failure. Specifically, the process of failure when it comes to creativity. My process to failure has three distinct components: the recognition phase, the investigation phase, and the decision phase. I'll tackle each one in turn and try to explain how it works for me. Phase 1 is the recognition phase. Recognition in and of itself is understanding that I indeed failed. Believe it or not, this is actually the hardest step for me in my process. Recognizing that I have failed has been a very big problem for me because I was choosing to be willfully ignorant of my failures. As a hypothetical example, whenever I sit down to create a character design or a character piece, what I'll do is I'll sit down, I'll have an initial idea of what I want to do or what I aim to achieve with this piece, and I will proceed forward with the intent of achieving that goal or making the artistic intent clear. However, during the middle, somewhere along the line, it ends up getting lost. Maybe I have to actually change up a component of the posing because I just couldn't figure out how to make it work in a specific angle, or I didn't know how perspective worked, or maybe I didn't like a design element and I ended up having to draw it anyway. The list goes on. But some change happens in the process, and then my mentality changes. It goes from I have this intent or this goal in mind to I just want to get this done. And when I fall into that mentality, the unfortunate result is I'll finish the piece, yes, and I'll post it, but I won't take the time I need to actually reflect on the piece as a whole and self-analyze. Part of it also has to do with, I think, the dopamine hit you get when you post online and get likes. I think that plays a role in why I also tend to forget about it after it's done. But for the most part, I think it's mostly on me. I don't self-analyze enough. In fact, I try to let other people do the work for me. And I noticed this a lot when I was a younger artist, and it was kind of more acceptable. I would constantly be posting art and looking for people's feedback. I think part of the reason why I was so into critique. Whether or not I could handle the critique properly is a different topic altogether. But I definitely was seeking feedback, seeking critique, seeking people to put eyes on my work and tell me what's wrong rather than try to figure out what's wrong myself. And it's because I got into this feedback loop that required the participation of others that I failed to develop the habit of self-reflection after the fact. And so whether a piece was a failure or success at any given point, I wouldn't know. But what would happen is I would start feeling demotivated. I wouldn't want to draw. I stopped drawing constantly, and I started drawing in periodic spurts. And I now look back and I notice that every time I had a drawing sort of drought, it was because I didn't get told what to do. I released a series of pieces, didn't get much feedback, and ultimately that led to me not having drive to continue forward. On the flip side of the coin, when I did get feedback, a lot of times there'd be a lot of feedback and I'd pick and choose what I wanted to focus on and end up ignoring other parts of it. That happens naturally as part of the critiquing process anyway, like when an individual sort of tries to accept the critique, but it was even worse in my case because, again, there was no period of self-reflection. So something I'm trying to rectify now is I'm trying to definitely take a moment or two after I finish a piece, before I even post it online, and I try my hardest to understand, okay, what was my intent with this piece? What was my goal? Did I achieve that goal? If I didn't, I know that I failed. I am understanding that this is a failure. I'll still post it, of course. I mean, it's art. I put work into it. I will post what I've done. But I think that making it clear to yourself what is the success and the failure helps you continue on the creative path, and it won't lead you down a path where you might have to stop or take a break or maybe get a block. I'm just hypothesizing about the block part. That's something I really had to think about further, but I just thought I'd put it in there. Feel free to disagree with me in the comments below. Once I've determined whether or not a piece is a success or failure, Obviously, that determines how the process goes from there. There's a success process, and then there's also a failure process. I'm not going to talk about the success process today. It's all about failure. So let's just assume that I failed after doing my recognition phase and understanding that I actually have failed to accomplish what I wanted to do with a particular art piece or creative endeavor. In that case, we move on to the investigation phase, which is, simply put, understanding why I failed. This can range from doing a self-critique of the work to try and understand what the problem points were, writing them down or keeping them in mind, and trying your best to find every variable associated with it. This process can be long or short, depending on how you felt about the piece during the actual creation process or during the endeavor during the actual creation process. For me, it's been kind of long, because I'm really trying to dig in to what's wrong with my piece. And sometimes I myself am blind to some of the mistakes. So if you really want to go hard with the investigation, this is where critique from others comes into play. I think only after you've done your investigation yourself should you involve other people in the process. Because, as I mentioned before, if you put yourself in that reliance on others, then you're not going to be able to think for yourself as much as you want to in the creative process. And that will hinder you eventually. The creative process is very personal, and you can't constantly have people telling you how to do your process. So there's like a fine line. You need people to help reinforce what you're doing, but you can't have people directing you. And then, of course, once we've completed the investigation phase, we move on to the decision phase. The decision phase is basically just understanding what to do next, how I'm going to tackle my current situation, knowing that I've failed. Well, there's only two things that I can really do. I can either attempt to go down a new path that I haven't tread before, or I can try to repeat the same piece that I had failed. One example of the decision process that I'm actually implementing now, even though it's about 8 years late, is I am actually trying to do more redraws of my old art, specifically from the 2012 period, which is when I believe I was at my best artistically. I don't mean in terms of skill, I mean in terms of pursuing the path of being a creative. And what I've noticed is that the redraws are actually bearing a lot of fruit because I knew what to do. Basically, I set out with a goal. I want to see how much I have improved, or if I have improved at all. And I took the piece that I had drawn 8 years ago and I redrew it. And at the end, I determined, did I actually succeed in my intent? And the answer was yes, because I was able to clearly define whether or not my art was better. And of course, once you've made your decision, that's when the rebound process begins, or the rebound phase of your creative process begins, where you can get back up, stand back up, and try again. Depending on how you want to go forward, you can try again or you can try something new, but you will get back up. And I think this topic is kind of important because it's not just a 1-2. I think that's where I was getting it wrong. It's not fail, try again, fail, try again. No, there's an entire subset of steps to take to be prepared to try again. And that's what I found intriguing, and I hope you all found it interesting as well. I'm kind of curious as to what others think about this, if this was kind of obvious or if you guys had a different view of failure. I'd also like to know if there are maybe steps you'd add or take away from the 3 phases that I have talked about today. And that'll do it for this video. Thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed. If you're into artistic thought process videos like this, live streams where I draw my manga project concepts live and talk to you guys, or any type of artistic creative content that involves some thought process, consider giving this video a like and subscribing to my channel. Now I'm off to go play Final Fantasy VII Remake, so I will see you guys next week. Adios.